was an interesting lesson, and that was not recorded intentionally. But yeah, I'm going to. And but Rosemary, I did not hear your answer. How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm feeling pretty good. I don't know if people heard. I 2 for 3 on international trips and catching COVID, but I had a very mild case, and I am feeling pretty good now.
Well, your attitude about it is phenomenal because, yeah, some people, but you travel a lot internationally too, so it's not like it's not
Well,
like you're.
I mean, I had to spend 5 days of my 10-day cruise in a luxury cabin. It's really hard to feel sorry for yourself when you
No,
get.
I know, but um, as long as you felt okay, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we care about. But it is strange that we live in a time now where a COVID diagnosis on a cruise is going to make you quarantine, which, by the way, is like
Isolate.
isolate. Yeah, whatever. It's one of the few, I would say one of the few COVID restrictions that we still have, right? Is
Yeah,
that
well, it was a ship's rule, but they were very clear that they had the right to toss me off the ship if I didn't comply. So
yeah, but what I'm telling you, I'm not, I know, but
yeah.
yes, can she swim is what Mike said. But I will tell you this, um, this happened, in the last year when I went on a cruise.
Disembark. They
When
weren't
I,
going to
where,
throw me in the water.
yeah, I understand, but um, on the last cruise that I just went on, because that policy, Rosemary, is a policy of, I'm about to say something I probably shouldn't say, but I'm going to say it because I already started saying it. The ship's doctor on the cruise that I was on a few months ago said, um, happened to be Jewish, by the way, South African Jewish guy. He said that if you have COVID, do not tell him.
Well, I wanted to get medicated.
I know. I'm just telling. I didn't say that that's right. I didn't say I'm encouraging that. I'm saying
Mhm,
that he flat out told me that.
mhm.
If you know you have COVID, now the interesting thing, of course, is that the whole purpose of that is to stop its spread. But the
Right.
understanding to some extent is that if you uh, if you had a mild, I don't know, I don't know what to tell you other than that's what he said.
I'm sure
Beloved,
there were plenty of people who felt sick and weren't testing.
yeah. Look, it's always been a problem on cruises. They're
Right.
they're kind of petri dishes, and people used to get
There, the
norovirus and
CDC guidelines don't even they folded their COVID guidelines into respiratory illnesses, and they now just say, if you feel sick, isolate for 5 days, and they don't say test unless you feel that you would benefit from the medication.
yeah. So look, it is what it is, but I'm just telling
Right.
you that's what the guy on the ship said. Anyways,
I
uh,
believe it.
I'm glad you're feeling better, and I'm sorry it impacted. But otherwise, you had some good times when you
Oh
weren't.
yeah, yeah. I had some nice times in France. Didn't get to see much of Spain.
All right. Well, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. Rosemary got sick on our Israel trip too, which
Yeah, but
which was a little earlier in the
right.
COVID. It was weird how that was only a year and a half ago, but
Right.
people were still much more uptight about it,
Mhm.
or um, we were really concerned about it. But I mean, look, I guess, whenever you have people on a trip together,
Yeah.
I mean, I went out and got 20 tests or 25 tests that day that Rosemary got sick because I just wanted to make sure no one else got sick. But anyways, the point is that we definitely live in times now where we have one illness that causes people to absolutely freak out. But as far as I know, I've never heard anybody testing for norovirus, which has been really devastating to people on a cruise. Anyways, that being said, my friends, last week we missed you, Rosemary, for the reading, but Judith did a great job of reading the Psalms while you were gone. But we started with the Psalms of Shabbat last week, and we listened to some of the Psalms from some of the versions of Psalm, specifically Psalm we listened to Psalm 95, 92. We actually finished with Psalm 96, which is one that we also listened to some versions of, which is the one, I'll just show you back real quick. That's the one that begins with Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai Kol Haaretz, and then of course has the very famous line, Yismechu Hashamayim B'Tagel Haaretz. So that line from all of Kabbalat Shabbat Psalms is, I guess, the most famous. Lechuna Ranana, which was Psalm 95, was also, I'll just show you real quick, also a very famous line that has been taken out for prayers, and sometimes again just that one line is sung, or the first two lines are sung usually. Yeah. So what's interesting about these Psalms that we're reading right now is these are Psalms that I know really well. In some cases, I know them by heart. They're not very long. I mean, Psalm 95 is 11 verses. Psalm 96 is 13 verses. But I feel like I know them really well. But what's fun about studying them like this and reading them like this, line by line, and talking about them, is that it's almost like, some of the Psalms that I don't read very much, it's interesting because like I didn't see that before. I didn't catch the connection to something else. But what's interesting about these Psalms that I know really well, and some of you know some of these lines really well, is almost like, when you realize that this friend that you have for years, you notice something, interesting that you never noticed before about them that, is fascinating and is really nice. It's like fresh eyes on something that you know a lot. That you know very well, but when you see it with fresh eyes, it's a different take on it, and it's special. So these Psalms are there's a reason why were chosen, because they're really beautiful and they have beautiful celebratory, uplifting ideas. But again, Psalm 92 and then Psalm 95 through 99 are all part of the Kabbalat Shabbat Psalms, and yeah, and we'll keep taking a look at them because we're still reading. The next three are all part of that collection. So again, as I mentioned last week, the most famous part of Kabbalat Shabbat is Lachadodi, which isn't from the Psalms. It was written 500 years ago in Sfat, but it is like the non-Psalm part of Kabbalat Shabbat. The rest of Kabbalat Shabbat pretty much are these Psalms. So let's take a look at Psalm 97. And again, we also pointed out these Psalms don't have, for the most part, except for Psalm 92, they don't have superscriptions. They're not, this is a Psalm of David. This is a Psalm of, on the Gittit, or there's no direction here, for the most part in these Psalms. So some of the Psalms came into prayers definitely during the early rabbinic period, for sure they're there, and which means they were there before. Right. So the prayers already, the tefillot that let's say existed before the rabbis started writing this stuff down, probably, we'd have to say, yeah, during the Second Temple period, but let's say 2,300 years ago, 300s or 200s. We really don't know much about that period because the rabbis didn't start really writing the stuff down until the 200 BCE. So we don't know how much before 200 BCE it was written. Was it written 100 years before, 200 years? We really don't know. And we don't have a lot of history or writing from that period. As I mentioned, the period between 500 and about 200, we really don't know a lot. If it wasn't for Josephus and a couple other like minor references in other people's writings, we wouldn't know what happened to the Jewish people in the land of Israel for those couple hundred years. It's completely unknown, because it was overall fairly peaceful. The Hellenistic period, the early Hellenistic period during Alexander the Great was a transition from the Persians to the Greeks. It didn't seem to be terrible for the Jewish people. There's definitely cultural differences, and there was political issues between the different kings that were fighting over the area, but it's pretty calm. And so no one wrote anything down. No, the only thing that we think was written during that period is the book of Ecclesiastes. There's other books that we think might have, been written during that period, but for the most part, there's not even a lot of books in the Bible that were composed during that time. You know, we speculate about, yeah, like whether Jonah or something, some of these other books were written in that 500 to 200 year, you know, that period, but really we don't know a lot about it. Once the Jews came back during the Persian period and until the Maccabees, we really don't know much about it. To see what it's like, yeah. Other than the fact that because it was so calm, maybe it was kind of boring. But that's and a good kind of boring. Boring, we don't have people bugging us. Bugging us, yeah, exactly. Just like today. Very, very good. So let's take a look at Psalm 97, which interestingly begins with a very, I would say, very similar phrase. If you read it in Hebrew, it's a really similar phrase to the one we had just a few verses over, right? Yismechu hashamayim v'tagel haaretz, yiram hayam u'mula'o, which was we mentioned, says the words shamayim, aretz, and yam. All three biomes, all three worlds that the Bible talks about. The Torah talks about three worlds, right? The heavens, the earth, and the seas, right? And that's the way creation is done. Creation is three worlds. Creation of those three worlds. We talk about the fact that kosher animals whenever we talk about kashrut, we divide them into land animals, sea animals, and animals of the air. Those are the way the Bible sees the world, is those three: land, sea, and sky. And so look at this. Adonai malach tagel haaretz yismechu yam rabim. So let's take a look. Rosemary, if you'd read that beginning for us.
The Lord is king. Let the earth exult. The many islands rejoice. Dense clouds are around him. Righteousness and justice are the base of his throne. Fire is his vanguard, burning his foes on every side. His lightnings light up the world. The earth is convulsed at the sight. Mountains melt like wax at the Lord's presence, at the presence of the Lord of all the earth. The heavens proclaim his righteousness, and all peoples see his glory. All who worship images, who vaunt their idols, are dismayed. All divine beings bow down to him. Zion, hearing it, rejoices. The towns of Judah exult because of your judgments, O Lord. For you, Lord, are supreme over all the earth. You are exalted high above all divine beings. O you who love the Lord, hate evil. He guards the lives of his loyal ones, saving them from the hand of the wicked. Light is sown for the righteous, radiance for the upright. O you righteous, rejoice in the Lord and acclaim his holy name.
Yeah. Again, 12 verses, very similar to the previous Psalms in their length and kind of their style. Any comments, any things that you noticed in this psalm? I mean, obviously I'm going to point out it's a very it's similar to kind of, what we know about the Canaanites and about other peoples who write, psalms about God, about their gods, and these gods are powerful, they're mighty, they sit on a throne, they let loose lightning, right? It seems to be almost again, and it says specifically, if you worship images, you vaunt idols, because the other divine beings bow down to God, right? God is exalted above all divine beings. So the question of, again, does this reflect, and again, we know this is pretty Jewish because it talks about Zion, it talks about Judah. This is not, if this was from another culture and adapted, it was well adapted. They put in Zion and Judah. They made this about us. They made this about our land. So this wasn't just lifted and put in to our psalm book. This was intentionally edited or changed, or it was written with this intention, and it reflects again a time when people don't quite have a completely they don't see monotheism quite the way we see it, which is that there are other divine beings. They're just all subservient to God. And if you make an idol to them, clearly idols are not good. I mean, idols are useless. I mean, look, the way we interpret this now is that it's saying that God is above all the angels. God is above all the everything. God's above anything, even, that's supernatural, if you will. I mean, that's the way we understand it today. But in the ancient world, did they understand it as there were other gods? They're just subservient to God? I mean, it's possible. Again, we said that there's other Psalms. We pointed out Psalm 82, God in the audience of other gods. I mean, that's Be'edat Elohim, so this isn't the only place we have this, but it definitely has that understanding. But again, divine images or idols or whatever, they're useless. They're not real. And I will say that as much as God is a God of power, God is a God that melts the mountains, right? God mounts the mountains melt like wax. What a great imagery, that God is just, his power is so immense that even the mountains would melt. But it also says that God is a God of righteousness, tzedek and mishpat, righteousness and justice. The law and justice are still part of that equation, which is God's power and God's might is still manifest through justice. It's not just power. It's not just God is the most powerful God, that no God can stand up to him. It's that at the foundation of God's rule is righteousness and justice. And that's not something that we see in pagan idolatry. It's not something that we saw, that you don't see that. That line is unique amongst religions in the ancient world. It really is. I mean, you can study it. You can look at the other religions of the world, and you don't find lines like this. That in the midst of portraying God as the God, like literally, if you take this out, this could be about Zeus. If you take out this line, this could be about Zeus. If you turn, this into, some Greek city instead of Zion and Judah. I mean, come on. But there is a difference, and it's that difference. Now, as you said, it begins with this great line, the earth exalts and the islands, which is the word iyim, which is it's not a typical word that we have in the Bible. It's many islands, right? Many islands rejoice, the many islands. It's not something, usually we'll say the waters would rejoice, or the waters would somehow be in this, but it's the islands and the waters that are picked out. But it's, again, very much like the Yismechu, and it has the same word, Yismechu. And it doesn't have as much as the earth, the sea, and the sky, but it does have the earth and the sky. And there is a little bit of the waters, right? Because the islands represent the waters. But it's definitely not as much about the waters. But this line, and again, this line here, the righteous rejoice in the Lord, right? Again, the word tzaddik, important, this idea of God's holiness, God's greatness being connected to righteousness. But this line right here is the most famous line in the Psalm. This is the line that the rabbis took out and made and put into prayers. This is the line that when people sing Psalm 97, this is the line they remember. And it really is a beautiful line. And the imagery here is light, right? Or zaru ala tzaddik u'lisharei lev simcha. This is a line that, again, in some cases, it's the only line sung when someone's singing Psalm 97. As I said, Psalm 96, they'll take Yismechu. In Psalm 95, the line that's taken out is here's in Psalm 95. I said we'll take out Lechuna Ranana, but out of this psalm, out of Psalm 97, it is this line, Or Zarua. So I'm going to play you a couple versions of Or Zarua, and different, you know, the different styles, very different styles of Or Zarua. But it's a beautiful line. Talks about light. You know, we talk about Or a lot, which we understand, of course, not to mean like, you know, light from a candle or from a flame, but divine light, you know, that it's definitely holy light. So I'm going to play a couple Or Zaruas that are, some have been written by, well, I'll play you a couple, and we're not going to play all of these, but these are really nice ones. Actually, let me play this one first. This is Ozzy Schwartz, I said, from Park Avenue Shul. That's very much like the traditional Chazanut. This is a camp version. It's based on an Israeli version. You might have heard this one. Yeah. Now I'm going to play you a couple more modern versions. This one's Rick Recht, who's obviously a very well-known Jewish musician from St. Louis, actually. And he's done a lot. He's influenced a lot of Jewish musicians over the last 25 years. What? Rick? No, that one's not very well known, but it's a really nice one. And Rick Recht has written other melodies that we've done. He's done Wendy's done the Hatikva that and actually Rick and Addie have done it too, the Hatikva that he's run called The Hope. This is the hope that lasts forever. Hatikva, the hope that lasts forever. That's Rick Recht. Here's Abby Strauss, friend of mine. She's in Florida. She records with, you've seen her because she's the one who sings along with Joe Buchanan. So this is her version of Or Zarua. It's just pretty. It's a pretty version. We'll be doing a Shabbat with her next year. We have this recording. Well, no, I'm laughing because Rick Recht actually started it. It's called Jewish Rock Radio. I'm not sure how to get it. I think it's like you get it through the internet. It's called Jewish Rock Radio. And I'm also laughing because my dad tried to start it 20 years ago. First started doing internet radio. No one knows. Well, it is great. I mean, anyway, that's her Or Zarua, which again, Or Zarua, her Or Zarua, we actually have a version of it that she recorded it with when we did Joe Buchanan Shabbat. The thing is Joe Buchanan stuff is so good with her and with Saul that I don't use her solo that much, but that Or Zarua is really pretty. One of my favorite Or Zaruas is, yeah, but that's what they're playing right now on Jewish Rock Radio. Yeah. So it's Rick Reck owns it. I mean, it's his thing. Yeah, yeah. So then the one that I really like, or I've liked for a long time, because I like his music, and we haven't done a Shabbat with him yet, but he's in the Carolinas. I think he's in North Carolina. Is Dan Nichols, and we do Dan Nichols. Obviously, Rick and Addie love his Beyond, which we do instead of Chatzi Kaddish when they're there. But here's his Or Zarua, which is, I think, is really pretty. But they're all good. I mean, these are all good. I mean, that's, it's like a choice. But this is I think was one of his more well-known compositions until some of his his later stuff like Beyond. But I think this is pretty early for him. So this is Dan Nichols. Anyways, lots of great versions of Or Zarua. Why? Because it's such a beautiful phrase. I mean, it's just such a wonderful, it's such a wonderful phrase. And it captures to some extent for us, this idea that whether it's in the world to come or in this world, that there is a light that shines on people as they are living, in righteousness. And this idea that we get a glow, that we get a light from doing good deeds and being, living a life of a tzaddik. So it's a really hopeful idea, and it's one that I think, has resonated for us throughout our history, which is that light that we get from that glow that we get. So again, one of the more famous lines from Kabbalat Shabbat, and again, you heard that's the only line he said saying in Hebrew. He wrote a bunch of stuff around it, but Or Zarua Tzaddik is the refrain. So yeah, it's not the whole psalm. It's one line. So when we talk about how we build prayers around these things, our ancestors did it. They took out one line, they put it in the Torah service. When we open up the ark, we say Avu Adonai. You saw that line last week from the Torah. So for us to do it, it's no different. We're using, the language and we're using English language maybe more than but they sang songs in Aramaic, like the Kaddish. So anyways, it's just a lot more similar to Hebrew than English is. So that's Psalm 97. And let's take a look at Psalm 98. which does begin with an introduction, and it does begin with a mizmor, which is a psalm, and then it gets into a phrase that we've heard a couple of times, including, as I said last week, in Psalm 96. Sing to the Lord, Shir Ladonai, Shir Chadash. All right, Rosemary, take it away.
Sing to the Lord a new song, for he has worked wonders. His right hand, his holy arm has won him victory. The Lord has manifested his victory, has displayed his triumph in the sight of the nations. He was mindful of his steadfast love and faithfulness toward the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth beheld the victory of our God. Raise a shout to the Lord, all the earth. Break into joyous songs of praise. Sing praise to the Lord with a lyre and melodious song. With trumpets and the blast of the horn, raise a shout before the Lord, the King. Let the sea and all within it thunder, the world and its inhabitants. Let the rivers clap their hands, the mountains sing joyously together at the presence of the Lord, for he is coming to rule the earth. He will rule the world justly and its peoples with equity.
Yeah, and very similar in many ways to Psalm 96, which is much more familiar and much more well-known than Psalm 98. But there's almost like in this psalm, it's almost a condensed version of some of the things that we just read in the previous, 3 or 4 psalms. But that phrase, Yiram Hayam Umalo, and then Umalo Tevel v'yeshev ba, which is let the sea and all within it thunder, the world and its inhabitants, which again, very much like Yismechu, it also has what we've read in some of the previous psalms, talking about the instruments that we pray, right? The nevel v'chinor, in this case, it's just the chinor, which is the lyre, the harp that we said is the Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee is called the Kinneret in Hebrew because it's shaped like the lyre. It's shaped in that kind of wide, almost like not a pear shape, but kind of like a little bit like the way the lyre looked. And then this also, of course, has the sound of the shofar. So you can see that what's our, it's almost like, again, it takes some of the previous psalms that we've read and mashes them together in a very short mashup of, the ideas that we've seen in these psalms that we sing for Shabbat. But again, this psalm was also included. This was also a, part of those psalms that, that we sing on Shabbat. And, the tradition we have of including the line of the shofar in particular is something that we say at traditionally as part of the shofarot verses that we do as part of the when we blow the shofar. So there you go. So when we see those lines again, the rabbis kind of focused on them and said, "Hey, this is a line that we would have." I do want to share. I found this one thing that I thought was kind of interesting for Psalm 98, which I want to play for you. This one was an interesting one because. Take care. Good luck, Mike. Let's listen to this Psalm 98. This one's an interesting one. If you can see right here what it is, it's Theodore Bickel reading parts of the Bible, including Psalm 98. So here's just a little taste of this.
O sing unto the Lord a new song, for he hath done marvelous things. His right hand and his holy arm hath gotten him the victory. Shout unto the Lord, all the earth. Break forth loudly and sing praises. Sing unto the Lord with the harp. with the harp and the voice of a psalm, with trumpets and sound of cornet, make a joyful noise before the Lord, the King. Let the sea roar, and the fullness thereof, the world, and they that dwell therein. Let the floods clap their hands. Let the hills be joyful together before the Lord. Hallelujah, praise God in his sanctuary.
Nope, I'm not going to pull out that part because that's Psalm 150. You can see it says Psalm 98 and 150, and they just went right into the other. But yeah, this was people did these kind of things back in the 60s and 50s, 60s, and 70s when they did recordings, when they had actual records. They would have people read, do readings, and this was one that Theodore Bickel did. He ended up obviously recording lots of Jewish music, lots of Yiddish music, and especially later in life, he did a lot of recordings of Jewish music. So again, especially like the last 5 or 10 years of his life, he was doing Jewish music all over the place. And yeah, he was an interesting guy, and obviously had a very classically trained kind of voice. But yeah, Theo had a big impact on a lot of people in LA, and that's where he lived the latter part of his life. I think he lived to be about 91. But he was born in Vienna, and was trained in went through the classic training, but he was very connected to Israel throughout his life. And he actually he was born in Austria, and he went to with the Anschluss, he moved to Israel, and that's where he trained, for his early days in high school and stuff. And then he went to London. But yeah, he's an interesting guy, interesting dude, and ended up doing a lot of little bit parts, Here, there's a picture of him for people who forgot what Theodore Bickel looked like. But yeah, he is an interesting dude. Yeah. Anyways, I think I might have gone to his funeral. I'm not 100% sure. I know my dad did, but I think I might have gone with him. What year was it? 2015. I mean, yeah, wasn't that long ago. It's only 9 years ago. Anyways, yeah, that's Psalm 98, very short psalm. This one, not as many lines taken out for songs, not a one, not like Yismechu or those other lines. But again, a lot of the previous ideas kind of merged into that. Now, this is the last psalm that is part of the Shabbat Psalms, the Kabbalat Shabbat Psalms. But let's take a look at this one. You'll see some of the similarities, and again, maybe why it was included. And maybe again, when we come out of the Shabbat Psalms, then you'll kind of see what's different between those Psalms and the ones that come after it. But let's take a look at Psalm 99.
The Lord, enthroned on cherubim, is king. Peoples tremble, the earth quakes. The Lord is great in Zion and exalted above all peoples. They praise your name as great and awesome. He is holy. Mighty King who loves justice, it was you who established equity, you who worked righteous judgment in Jacob. Exalt the Lord our God and bow down to his footstool. He is holy. Moses and Aaron among his priests, Samuel among those who call on his name. When they called to the Lord, he answered them. He spoke to them in a pillar of cloud. They obeyed his decrees, the law he gave them. O Lord our God, you answered them. You were a forgiving God for them, but you extracted retribution for their misdeeds. Exalt the Lord our God and bow toward his holy hill, for the Lord our God is holy.
Yep. And again, very short, 9 verses. You can see how short that psalm is. Any comments or interesting points that people want to make on this psalm? Anybody have any? What?
Only a little story from when I was a kid, and a choir director was singing, about God enthroned among the cherubim. Only he got the words a little wrong and thundered out in his beautiful voice, "For he sitteth upon the cherubim."
Yep.
We all laughed.
Well, that's what people, people love this idea of. And again, it's so funny because when we think about what the word cherubic means in English, right?
Right.
It's
For
little
little
chubby,
baby angels.
little chubby
That's
faced
probably
baby.
not what they meant.
Yeah, clearly, because these are awesome beasts, heavenly beasts, angelic, divine animal combination beasts that you can see are part of God's throne, that are part of God's might. The earth quakes, peoples tremble because of the cherubim. Not exactly cherubic. So it's funny how the word in English has lost its meaning. But again, that's because of the Greek version of angels that we got, which were basically little Cupid, little angels from the Greco-Roman world. Those were the angels. They had wings. They flew. Well, those are angels. And that's what we make angels look like. And then, oh, okay, well, that's what the angels look like. No, it's not. The Bible is pretty clear that that's not what angels look like. So that's how we got this weird, this weird.
Nobody would look at a Cupid and say, "Fear not."
That's like Sarah's picture of Ezekiel's dream.
Yes.
It's a cherub.
Yes, which is not
Scary.
something that we want to mess around with or pinch its cheeks, because
Mhm.
those things will destroy us with their power and their might. We're quaking when we see them. So it's kind of funny that that the lines wouldn't make sense if that was what our view of what a cherub looks like. So it's very interesting that that's the way where it is. And again, the word kruvim comes from the idea that these are entities that are close to God. They're the close angels. That's what it means. They're the angels that are the closest to God, or again, angelic entities. It's hard for us to even say the word angel because it's not what we think of when we think of an angel, because that's more of either a person looking like divine being or whatever, but these were not. Or if they had any human element to them, it was part of the composite of having an eagle or a lion or some other very scary kind of beast attached to it, maybe again a bull. But clearly this is talking about Zion. This is talking about us and our greatness. Again, it's a God that loves justice and equity, right? This is Mishpat, God that loves, right, justice and righteousness, right? What's interesting is that it also tells us that God holds us accountable, and God holds everybody accountable, including Moses and Aaron and Samuel. So what's interesting about this is that we don't get a pass just because we're really great. I do want to point out, and because we don't see it a lot in the Psalms, we don't see references to biblical characters a lot. We've seen them a couple of times, and we've always pointed it out because it's so rare. Look, we're at the 100th Psalm, and I think we've seen 4 or 5 Psalms. I mean, this one does what some of the Psalms do, which talk about Jacob, but clearly sometimes Jacob is not Jacob. This is even this line seems to be, again, Jacob meaning Israel, the people of Jacob. Jacob as a synonym for Israel. But what's interesting about this is that it says Moses and Aaron among priests, though we normally think of Moses not as a priest, but as a leader, as a prophet, as the political leader, where Aaron was the priest. But here it puts Moses and Aaron together as priests. And what's interesting here too is that Samuel is grouped with them, which shows us that at least at this point, when this psalm was composed, that Samuel was really taking a place almost as high up as Moses and Aaron. Samuel is up there with Moses and Aaron as a leader, called out by name. And it doesn't happen a lot. It doesn't happen a lot in the Psalms. So if the Psalms are written during the first and second temple periods, which is what we believe, it tells us that there was a point in time when Samuel's recognition was so significant that he's mentioned in the same breath as Moses and Aaron. So that's one thing that I want to point your attention to, is how important Samuel was. And we know it. I mean, we can see it. The book is still called the Book of Samuel when it's really about King David, and in the second book of Samuel is about it's about Saul and David, but second book of Samuel, there's no Saul anymore. It's just David and his family, the rebellions against him and his children and all that horrible stuff. But it's still called the Book of Samuel. So we know that Samuel was very highly regarded by our ancestors. But yeah, maybe even again, part of this trifecta or triumvirate of great leaders for our people, again, who call upon God's name.
You know, it's interesting when you look up Moses, Aaron, and Samuel.
Yeah.
The internet search pops up Psalm 99:6.
Yeah, well,
There's like nothing else.
it's not. This is not something that we see. We have no other indication that they are grouped like this with Aaron. There are places where Moses and Samuel will be used together. I think actually one of the other Psalms mentions Moses and Samuel, but it's not just Moses and Samuel. Moses, the idea that there's a line between Moses and Samuel is interesting, because Samuel is both a religious and a political leader, which is what Moses is as well. The idea of somebody who has kind of the two of the branches of the three powers, if you will, because you have the religious, you have the political. Well, in reality, of course, in the biblical period, we have the prophets, right? So we have three powers, if you will, the priests, the prophets, and the kings. But, at this stage, to some extent, Samuel and Moses take on almost all three of those roles, if you will. But, you can make the argument that Aaron pulls out the priesthood so that Moses really only has the prophet and he only has two of the three. But Samuel has to make a king, which he doesn't like to do. He doesn't want to do, and he basically says God is the king. And, if there's a king, of course, he's going to lose some power too. But yeah, Samuel was pretty powerful during his lifetime. Unfortunately, his sons were so bad that there was not going to be a dynastic passing of power to them, because they were not good. They were not good characters. And it seems like Samuel had a blind spot for them too, which is one of his faults. But again, the faults are called out, right? Right. You exacted retribution for their misdeeds, right? You answered them. You were forgiving for them, but you exacted retribution for their misdeeds. So this idea that even those guys get called on, for their mistakes, is an important idea in Judaism, which is that nobody is above the having to be called on account. So the two most famous lines, so Moses of Aharon, those lines are actually not that well known. But the two lines that are known very well are line 5 and line 9. And what's interesting is that it's almost like they're bookends. And if you see what they say, they sound similar. So, Romamu Adonai Eloheinu v'yishtachavu lahadam raglav kadosh hu. And then this is Romamu Adonai Eloheinu v'yishtachavu lahar kodsho ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Now, of course, we read those lines together because they both begin with Romamu, exalt the Lord our God. Right? This is Romamu, which we say when we take out the Torah, right? Romamu, Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lahadam raglav. And then we sing, Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho, which is this one right here. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. That's the Craig Talman version, but yeah, when we take out the Torah and we march around with it, we say these lines. We sing Romemu. So those lines go together in our, they're part of the Shabbat Psalms, but they're also part of every time we take out the Torah, those two lines. So, yeah, we like those two lines because again, it's talking about exalting the Lord. But yeah, they're bookends to the three lines in the middle, which are, gosh, God calls it an account to account even Moses, Aaron, and Samuel, right? He clearly loved them, but that didn't give him a pass. So it's interesting. We pull out the middle part. We don't talk about that part very much, but we do talk about exalting God and praising God. And it says right here, Zion, and it says also here, God's holy hill. The Har Kodesh is also, it's clear that we're talking about Jerusalem. So it's conveyed in that psalm. So again, another very short psalm. Lots of, kind of the ideas that we've talked about, praising God, screaming God, exalting. Romemu is to lift up God, to lift up God. But again, a God who also loves justice, loves mishpat, loves tzedek, loves righteousness. So that's Psalm 99. I'll play you a little bit of Romemu just so you don't have to just hear my horrible voice for Romemu, but I'll just play you a little Romemu. Yeah, there's even a synagogue now called Romemu. This is the Romemu that Craig wrote. Put this up here. Here we go.
Praise him in the firmament of his power.
Nope. Here we go.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu.
So it's interesting. That stuff came out 25 years ago. It says 1999. On the one hand, that seems like a long time ago. On another, it seems like this has been around forever. But that became very famous. This became very famous off this album. These all became big, these all became big stuff. This one, super big. We do this one. 25 years ago. Yep. That's his sister singing with him. And then he did this one too. I know. And I'll do that.
You're making me feel so old.
Well, this one we know too.
Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 svatai tiftach. Na 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 ufiaki. ופי יגיד תהילתך.
Yeah, that's way too fast. Let's see if this one.
עננה,
Yeah. This is slower.
עננה, ננה, ננה, ופי יגיד, ופי יגיד תהילתך.
So you can hear that has a little bit of a Hasidic sound to it. So yeah, he had some big hits off of that. That was a very, very important, which he did in conjunction with Sinai Temple. So Sinai Temple, essentially paid him to create that Shabbat service, and the melodies became very, very, very popular. It was really a kind of a groundbreaking thing, which again, he's a good friend, and hopefully he'll, it's crazy because you write, it's not like, you wonder how somebody kind of like puts together something, and then like, it's not like he's written 5 more albums like that. It's tough. I mean, it's not easy, but yeah, it's 25 years.
And Modest Yahoo, he became really big.
Yeah, I know, but then, it's not like he's continuing to write I mean, he is
No.
writing stuff, but it's not like,
Yeah.
he had a spurt of, big compositions, and then it's been very quiet for the last 20.
It's
15.
hard to produce art. Sometimes it comes
I
together,
know.
and other times it's a real struggle.
It is really tough. And again, I don't know how we can, look at it, how do people do that? But again, the Beatles wrote all their songs in about 10 years, it's crazy. It's pretty crazy. It's not like Paul McCartney stopped writing music. He's still writing music, and some of it's great, but it's not like, it's been very hard for him to write. If you think about how many hits he's written in the last 50 years, it's not easy.
Yeah.
So it's not like he stopped. He writes music all the time. So however that happens, it happened for Craig, and but it's great. The songs have a great legacy now. So now it's Psalm 100. Now I will tell you, it's not like Psalm 100 comes out and we're going, hey, look, it's Psalm 100. I don't think they looked at it like Psalm 100. It must be pretty significant. We made it 100, but it is, again, it's a psalm that. Well, let's take a look, because we just came out of the Shabbat Psalms. This one's not a part of it, but it begins with just a psalm of praise, Mizmor Latodah, and that's the only introduction, which again is part of verse 1, but it's not the whole verse, because it actually begins with the next lines, Hariu Adonai Kol Haaretz, which is very similar to Yismechu Hashamayim, which is, here we go.
Raise a shout for the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord in gladness. Come into his presence with shouts of joy. Acknowledge that the Lord is God. Scroll, please.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to go too fast because this is a 5-verse song. Sorry.
Acknowledge that, whoa. Acknowledge that the Lord is God. He made us and we are his people, the flock he tends. Enter his gates with praise, his courts with acclamation. Praise him, bless his name, for the Lord is good. His steadfast love is eternal. His faithfulness is for all generations.
That's it. So what's weird is that Psalm 100, sitting there at 100, is literally, again, this is five verses, right? It is, I mean, I forget how many actual words it is, but it's just a handful of words. And what if you take out the first 2 words, it's even shorter, Mizmor Latodah. If we take out a psalm of praise, and again, it's, the psalm is the one that we use for, we use it sometimes. Interestingly, it doesn't seem that much different than the previous psalms. And again, in some Sephardic communities, Psalm 100 is also part of Kabbalat Shabbat. But it's again, it's very similar to the previous ones. I have a hard time saying, well, why is this one And again, it could be because it's only 5 verses, but the line that comes out of this that a lot of people know, and again, it's only 5 verses, but this, interestingly, this is one. This one is one that people know, which is line 2. Ivdu Adonai b'simcha ba'u lefanav berina. Well, Glory, why don't you read the translation? If you're still on, read the translation that you have for line 2, for verse 2.
Okay, hang on 1 second. Let me see, because sometimes it's off a little. Let me see.
Yep.
Worship the Lord with gladness, come before him and joyful songs.
Okay, so that's actually pretty much the same thing of worship. Ivdu can also be to serve the Lord, but to pray to God or to serve God. This is a really popular line amongst Hasidic Jews. And so there's a lot of versions of this in the Hasidic world. I'll play you one. So again, that one line, serve God or praise God. It's an interesting one because again, it's not that much different than some of the other lines that we've read. But I think this idea of gladness, there's simcha and there's berina. It's like both words for joy are used in this one. And so I think that maybe that's why this line was taken as a Hasidic. But here's a Hasidic version of it that is pretty well known. I think this one's the one this is a very well-known Hasidic, Orthodox Hasidic singer, Benny Friedman. It's a big, it's a fast beat. You have to ride or walk with this. So you can imagine people dancing around you can see the picture of the kotel there. That's the kind of music that you'll hear sometimes at the kotel, and you'll hear at weddings, at Jewish weddings. And again, they use the words Ivdu et Hashem, or Es Hashem, instead of Ivdu, instead of using the word Adonai, especially in songs, that they'll use the word Hashem instead of Adonai. So what's interesting about that, again, is that's the kind of music that you'll hear at a Hasidic wedding or at a bar mitzvah, at a celebration, because again, it's about celebrating. It's about having a good time, but it's also about celebrating and worshiping God with gladness, so that our joy is always connected with Hashem or with God. So this is why, it's the perfect line. So again, not part of necessarily, as I said, Sephardic Jews, sometimes some Sephardic communities have Psalm 100 as part of Shabbat, but that line, and a really short psalm, is known as that's known as a line that that people sing and dance to, because it's about being happy, it's about being joyous. But it's so weird because it's a psalm that well, you can see how short it is, but it's a psalm that you'd almost I skipped over it because it's 5 verses, but it's Psalm 100. I'm going to play you a version of this, which is totally different than the Hasidic version that you just heard. But it's from one of the biggest Christian singers that's around today. He does a lot of work with big artists, but his name is Chris Tomlin, and he writes music that is sung like you go to Grace, more like a real life church, they sing Chris Tomlin all the time. He's their Craig Taubman, if you will. So I'll play this version of Psalm 100 that he did, which I think is pretty. Pretty much repeats after that. But anyways, it's a nice song, and it's pretty much takes the lines of Psalm 100 and gives it a very modern, upbeat sound, which again, I played for you a Hasidic version of those words of Psalm of line 2. And then you just heard, again, one of the biggest Christian artists, if not really the biggest Christian artist, I think right now. Has anyone heard of Chris Tomlin? I mean, I know I'm like, I'm talking about an artist that probably you guys haven't heard, but this guy literally records with the biggest artists in pretty much in country. I will tell you that he's not recording with a lot of pop R&B people, but he is recording with I'll show you this guy. He had a whole album that he did with a Christian album that he did with big, country artists. It's called Chris Tomlin and Friends. I mean, if you look who he did these songs with, he did them with, you can see Thomas Rhett. Let's see, who else was there? Crowder, it's pretty big. Let's see. He sang with Florida Georgia Line on this one. Florida Georgia Line did a few with him. Lady Antebellum Lady A did a song with them. So yeah, this one has Thomas Rhett and Florida Georgia Line. So yeah, I mean, this is a big singer who, again, is using our Psalms as a base for his work, which I think, is significant. It shows us again how powerful these words that our ancestors wrote thousands of years ago, that they're still inspiring musicians today. And again, this psalm is 5 lines, and he wrote a whole psalm of it. And I think, he has virtually every line. He has a line in that song. He kind of reformatted, enter his courts, instead of gates, but whatever, but, or no, I mean, it says gates and courts, but anyways, he basically reformatted or reworded the lines, but it's the psalm. So it's pretty amazing. I think it's, again, tells you how powerful our songs are. So, Psalm 100, 5 verses, very short. Psalm 101 begins with the words Le David Mizmor. which again, we're back to David. We have a Psalm of David again. And we have the word Mizmor, which literally means, again, translated as psalm, but has something to do with the way that it was sung. Or again, maybe it was an instrumental version of a psalm as opposed to a sheer. We don't know. But we have both words sometimes used in the same psalm, shir and mizmor. Like, so we don't know the difference between a shir and mizmor. We translate shir usually as song and mizmor as a psalm. All right, let's take a look at Psalm 101.
I will sing of faithfulness and justice. I will chant a hymn to you, O Lord. I will study the way of the blameless. When shall I attain it? I will live without blame within my house. I will not set before my eyes anything base. I hate crooked dealing. I will have none of it. Perverse thoughts will be far from me. I will know nothing of evil. He who slanders his friend in secret, I will destroy. I cannot endure the haughty and proud man. My eyes are on the trusty men of the land, to have them at my side. He who follows the way of the blameless shall be in my service. He who deals deceitfully shall not live in my house. He who speaks untruth shall not stand before my eyes. Each morning I will destroy all the wicked of the land, to rid the city of the Lord of all evildoers.
Interesting psalm. Interesting, maybe because, again, it's an example. It's not the only psalm we have of this, but it is one of, even though it says it's a psalm of David, this psalm sounds like it's pretty much coming right from the mouth of God, right? This is not something that we do. We don't destroy the wicked. This is God doing this. It's not really a well-known psalm within Jewish prayers. This is not a psalm that is used in different services or different parts of our prayers. It really is not. And it could be that the psalm, because these are the words of God, right? Right after line 1. Well, I don't know. This one is again very short, not one that makes its way into our tefillah. Even I'm looking for a line in here that that we use. I don't really see one. But again, it's like the Psalms that we've had previously, other than it's a Psalm of David, but it also says, I will sing of faithfulness and justice. Justice and faithfulness are in there. But again, these Psalms are all really, really short. The next Psalm we'll get to right now, is one of the longest in this section that we're reading today. Goes on for 29 verses. But overall, you can see the Psalms in this section are, I'll show you a visual of this. 1 second. They're generally like in this hold on a second. It is, I'll show you. These Psalms that we've just been reading, going from Psalm 98, or even going further back to Psalm 95, which again, the Psalms of Shabbat, 11, 13. We saw this. I mean, Psalm 93 was 5 verses as well, but 11, 13, 12, 9, 9, 5, and then this one is Psalm 8. Sorry, Psalm 101 is 8 verses. So you can see the average length of these Psalms is like 9 8 or 9 verses. So very short Psalms.
You know, this is the first one that makes the most sense to me of David.
Really?
Yeah. Because he's the leader.
Yeah, but it's almost like this can't even be done by a person. That's what's interesting about this psalm. Because I'm going to destroy all the evil people every day. I mean,
Okay, so he's gonna have his law enforcement go out.
I guess.
and enforce the law.
I guess. I guess. I mean, you could say, but it's not a psalm that seems like a psalm that like you or I can sing a lot, because it doesn't resonate with the stuff that we can do. Yeah. But as far as, so John's point is a psalm that David would sing that would make sense. Yeah. That he would say. Yeah.
He put his daily act down, his mission.
Okay. To root out evil. Okay. I like it.
Live without playing in my house.
Yeah.
Set the example.
Yeah. I agree.
Very tough to do.
Yeah. But it's interesting again that this psalm doesn't make it into our liturgy, maybe because of that reason. It's not a psalm. We can't do it. We don't have that power. We're not given that power. It's like the Lord's power. So Psalm 102 is, as I already showed you, is a longer psalm. Now we're going back to something different. What's interesting about this is that this psalm seems as though it has an opening to it. A prayer of the lowly man when he is faint and pours forth his plea before the Lord, which seems to be the introduction, right? It seems to be the superscription, that this is a psalm specifically for the person who is, in a really bad state, right? If you look at like that line being the line, and then it introduces, the rest of the stuff that comes after, because it seems like the first line of the psalm itself is Psalm 2. So let's take this psalm is a little bit more well known. As I said, it's 29 verses, so it's the longest psalm that we've read today. But it does seem to kind of get back to some of the psalms that we've had before, though again, does not say that this is a psalm of David, does not say this is a psalm of, it doesn't even really give us much introduction gives us no introduction for how it's supposed to be played, but there does seem to be this understanding that this psalm is for somebody who's feeling really bad. There is an understanding, and again, it goes back to the Talmud, that this is actually a psalm of David too. It's just the psalm of David, from David being in a situation where he feels so bad that he calls himself an afflicted person. And again, traditionally, this is a psalm, at least in the Sephardic community, that's read during Yom Kippur. So let's take a look at the psalm of somebody who's not in good shape.
O Lord, hear my prayer. Let my cry come before you. Do not hide your face from me in my time of trouble. Turn your ear to me when I cry. Answer me speedily. For my days have vanished like smoke, and my bones are charred like a hearth. My body is stricken and withered like grass, too wasted to eat my food. On account of my vehement groaning, my bones show through my skin. I am like a great owl in the wilderness, an owl among the ruins. I lie awake. I am like a lone bird upon a roof. All day long, my enemies revile me. My deriders use my name to curse, for I have eaten ashes like bread and mixed my drink with tears. Because of your wrath and your fury, for you have cast me far away. My days are like a lengthening shadow. I wither like grass. But you, O Lord, are enthroned forever. Your fame endures throughout the ages. You will surely arise and take pity on Zion, for it is time to be gracious to her. The appointed time has come. Your servants take delight in its stones and cherish its dust. The nations will fear the name of the Lord, all the kings of the earth, your glory. For the Lord has built Zion. He has appeared in all his glory. He has turned to the prayer of the destitute and has not spurned their prayer. May this be written down for a coming generation, that people yet to be created may praise the Lord. For he looks down from his holy height. The Lord beholds the earth from heaven to hear the groans of the prisoner, to release those condemned to death, that the fame of the Lord may be recounted in Zion, his praises in Jerusalem, when the nations gather together, the kingdoms, to serve the Lord. He drained my strength in mid-course. He shortened my days. I say, oh my God, do not take me away in the midst of my days. You whose years go on for generations on end. Of old you established the earth. The heavens are the work of your hands. They shall perish, but you shall endure. They shall all wear out like a garment. You change them like clothing and they pass away. But you are the same, and your years never end. May the children of your servants dwell securely, and their offspring endure in your presence.
Yep. So you can see why some people feel that David wrote this anyways, even though it doesn't say it's a Psalm of David. It's almost like, oh, this seems like David wrote this when he's in a really bad situation. And it does feel like this is a prayer for not just himself, but for the nation. Because what's interesting is that the writer starts out talking about how bad their life is. And for the first 12 verses, that's what it is. And then contrasting with God, who lives forever and is enduring, and that's the theme for the next 16 verses, is how powerful God is and how God endures through everything. But within that is this prayer and hope that God will acknowledge and take note of our suffering. And again, rather than the person that's started off with how bad their life is now asking for the help to come to everybody, not him. So it's interesting because it starts almost like, God, please help. Like my life is terrible, right? I'm like an owl, like sitting there, everything's been destroyed. And I'm like an owl just sitting there amongst the ruins. It's a very visual, very graphic, powerful image. But rather than ask for help himself, is that, God is going to help, God will help. The last line, may the children of your servants dwell securely, right? So it's almost as if the person's saying, I don't care about myself. Just let my people, let your people, let the Jewish people survive, because you're eternal, God, and let the people be connected to that, right? Let them, because they're in your presence, let them endure forever. So this psalm really, for a good, for half of the psalm almost, is pretty dark. It's a pretty sad psalm, right? I mean, that's just a fact, right? It's a pretty dark psalm. And again, as I mentioned, there's a tradition of reading this at Yom Kippur because, we're kind of, in a very somber note, and we're feeling kind of, like the weight of this life that is way too short. We feel that at Yom Kippur, right? And so it could make sense that it's read at Yom Kippur or read on Yom Kippur that enhances that feeling. Here's the craziest thing. There are 3 lines from this psalm. 3 lines that have nothing to do with that. As a matter of fact, they counter that. and they are sung all the time. And one could argue maybe three of the most famous words in all of the Psalms as far as Jewish stuff goes. Because again, I know Psalm 23 is the most famous Psalm. I'm not gonna belabor that point. We acknowledge that. But the three words of this Psalm are so famous, and they're sung all the time. And they totally were taken out of context. You know what it is, right? Anybody? It's this line right here. The appointed time has come. You will surely, the whole context, right, is you will surely arise and take pity on Zion, for it is time to be gracious to her. It's the time. And then it says, the appointed time has come. Ki va moed. Those three lines are sung all the time. And the word moed mean appointed time. But we also take that to be the appointed time is a holiday, is Shabbat. And interestingly, the most famous version of this is the Carlebach version, which became the song that became sung at every holiday, whether it's Rosh Hashanah or more celebratory holiday like Simchat Torah or Purim or Pesach, but every holiday, those last three lines, Kiva Moed, became like the song. And then it became like, again, a song for Shabbat, became a song for any like special occasion. The time has come. The appointed time has come. Because of course it's a time of God remembering us and taking pity on us and being gracious to us. It's time, right? Kiva Moed, the time has come. But it almost became almost like this is the Messianic age. The Kiva Moed it's time. It's time for God to start paying attention to us. And I think it got really, really popular because of Carlebach and because of Israel. And because we feel like we're in a special time right now where things are happening that we've been praying for thousands of years. So I'm going to play the very famous Carlebach version of it, which we sing all the time. And as you've heard many times, but we're going to listen to this. And I'll play another version too after this, but this is the one that we all know.
Kiva moed, kiva moed, kiva moed, kiva moed, kiva moed, kiva moed. Kiva moed, kiva moed.
Here we go.
Kiva moed, kiva, 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 kiva.
Oh, sorry.
Kiva moed.
So that is, yeah. Now we sing it sometimes in a little bit more upbeat, but Kiva Moed became like it became to some extent, I think, like the song that in the Hasidic world, and then later on in the not because of Karlbach, I think it became like one of the songs that became one of the most famous, well, definitely one of his most famous songs versions. But again, it's really that, those words, Kiva Moed. I will play if I can find it, because I know I have a video of it, but I don't seem to have the version of it. Well, it's basically that version anyways. It's the Todd Herzog version that we play at the, in the Sonoran Shabbat, the one out in the desert. But yeah, the Karlbach version is the one that everybody knows of, Kiva Moed. And I mean, I'll play you actually. I should play you one other Kiva Moed just so you can hear how other people do it too. I mean, this is a Rick Rec version. Hold it. Oh, that's the Karlbach version. Hold it a second. Kiva Moed. Yeah, it's everybody's doing the Karlbach version that I have. This one, I think. Nope. It's all Karlbach versions that I have up here. So the interesting thing is, again, I know there's some other ones, but yeah, I mean, here's an interesting one. I'll play you this one though. This one's cool. This is Neshama. This is Karlbach's daughter. She's a friend of mine. Doing it with a gospel choir. This is the Green Pastures Baptist Church. And I've heard other gospel versions of this. I mean, gospel choir singing this. Here. That's Neshama singing. Here, a little further. John's been touched by the Holy Spirit. So what's amazing about that, of course, is you don't even have to sing the words, right? You can just sing the nigun of it, and it gets you happy, and it really is amazing. I mean, so Karlbach goes back when he does the full version, which a lot of people don't even do. He does Kiva Moed, and then he comes back and says Ata Takum Tarachem. So he does go back and he does the first part of it, which is, take pity on Zion and be gracious to her. But it's so weird that line became like the line that of a psalm that, again, it does change. I mean, the second half of it, it changes right here, which is, my days are like, I wither like grass, and then, but you, God, are eternal. It changes there. So, but it's strange that in that second half of the psalm where it gets so up, where it does get upbeat, that line became the most famous line in the psalm. And again, I would argue that Kiva Moed has become one of the most famous lines that was sung. And again, how does a line, how does a phrase become so big? A lot of it has to do with the music and what's put behind it and how that translates into, like, everybody wanting to do that. And again, it's a Hasidic melody. It's not like Karlbach, he did it. That no one's saying those words to that beat behind, or that melody behind it, until he did it. But it's very similar to other Hasidic melodies that existed. And again, we don't know for a fact that he might have heard that somewhere. I'm not 100% sure that, what he actually wrote, but no one ever heard it before until he did it. So it doesn't matter. It's not like anyone claimed that he didn't write it, that melody. But again, the words are just 3 words from the psalm. But what's interesting is, again, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that when Karlbach wrote, and when the music, and he spent a lot of time in Israel. He has his own followers in the Moshav in Modi'in that continue his traditions. It's because of Israel, to some extent, that people felt that Kiva Moed, the appointed time has come, meant that this is the time for Zion to be reborn. And, this is the time that God has, chosen for Zion to come back to life, if you will. So that's why this line and the 3 words became so important. So again, a lot of people sing that, and it really has, it's become some of the most famous lines in Psalms. So it's hard for me to think about a psalm that, that's been sung more than that. So that psalm kind of got back to some of the things we saw in the early Psalms, which is, look, my life is fleeting. I'm suffering. It's hard. And there's a real personal draw there. Again, the second half of it really doesn't have that much of the personal. This line here, he drained my strength in mid-course, he shortened my days, goes back to that. But overall, it's about everybody. And it's about God helping everybody. So let's take a look. We're going to finish with Psalm 103 probably today. Let's take a look at Psalm 103. And we listened to a lot of music today. It was a good day for listening to music. But oh wait, I did have? No, I didn't. Sorry. Let's take a let's take a reading of this, and take a look at Psalm 103.
Bless the Lord, O my soul, all my being, his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and do not forget all his bounties. He forgives all your sins, heals all your diseases. He redeems your life from the pit, surrounds you with steadfast love and mercy. He satisfies you with good things in the prime of life, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. The Lord executes righteous acts and judgments for all who are wronged. He made known his ways to Moses, his deeds to the children of Israel. The Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love. He will not contend forever, or nurse his anger for all time. He has not dealt with us according to our sins, nor has he requited us according to our iniquities. For as the heavens are high above the earth, so great is his steadfast love towards those who fear him. As east is far from west, so far has he removed our sins from us. As a father has compassion for his children, so the Lord has compassion for those who fear him. For he knows how we are formed. He is mindful that we are dust. Man, his days are like those of grass. He blooms like a flower of the field. A wind passes by and it is no more. Its own place no longer knows it. But the Lord's steadfast love is for all eternity toward those who fear him. And his beneficence is for the children's children of those who keep his covenant and remember to observe his precepts. The Lord has established his throne in heaven, and his sovereign rule is over all. Bless the Lord, O his angels, mighty creatures who do his bidding, ever obedient to his bidding. Bless the Lord, all his hosts, his servants who do his will. Bless the Lord, all his works, through the length and breadth of his realm. Bless the Lord, O my soul.
So that psalm definitely seemed a little different from the psalms that we had over and over again. And of course, the refrain of this, bless the Lord, O my soul, or Ho Nafshi, is a phrase that we have other places in the Psalms. But it's definitely an unusual psalm in that it has that the reinforcement of that of that. I think it's in, let's see, it's in a total of 5 lines in the Psalms, bless the Lord, right? And so, there's a tradition of using these verses in the Slichot service, the time right before Rosh Hashanah that we're entering into. This next Friday, or this coming Friday, this Friday night, we're going to have some Slichot style service additions to our Friday night Shabbat. Tradition of doing Slichot on the Shabbat at the end of Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah goes back a long time. But it's also, again, something that it's something that when you see the way that this psalm lines up, when it kind of lines up that refrain, that this is this gives us almost, when you hear that, almost sounds like a gospel line itself. Bless my soul. Where does it come from? It comes from places like this in the Psalms, where you have this phrase, Baruch nafshi, bless my soul. So you can hear that, that kind of refrain of bless my soul, or you hear people kind of like saying the words in your mind, and you're saying, bless the Lord, my soul. This is a line that you can imagine people saying, bless the Lord, my soul. Any questions or comments about this psalm before we wrap up? Anybody? But again, I hear that, I hear that kind of lyric in a lot of the, I hear that a lot of in gospel songs. Anybody else? Any other comments before we wrap up today? The Psalms, as we got now into the 100s. No, nothing. I will tell you that again, this gives us kind of a way into the Psalms as we're reading them before High Holidays. You'll probably notice now as you look through the Machzor, you'll hopefully will notice some of the lines in your Machzor now as you're contemplating contemplating the new year and the liturgy that we have.
I can say I really enjoyed this, especially when you take the time to connect songs with psalms, and I can see where they came from. I know it takes a lot of time to find music and put it together.
Well, I'm trying to also give a I'm trying to give, a breadth. Obviously the psalm versions that we know the most, the ones that come from Jewish prayer, I want to definitely concentrate on, but I also want to show that, there's psalms that, have been used by other people. And trust me when I tell you that within the Christian community, Chris Tomlin is huge. And so when he records a psalm, and again, look, a lot of his songs are about Jesus, and a lot of his psalms are have kind of a Christian, very Christian overtone. The reality is that you can take psalms, and I love when we can borrow, and just as they borrowed from us, we can borrow back some of these styles and some of these modes, and we have. I mean, look, a lot of the music that Craig Taubman or Debbie Friedman or Rick Recht or any of those people have borrowed from, a lot of those musicians were also Gentile musicians that, that helped create sounds that, that have become part of our music. Again, a lot of those sounds were also written by Jews, but, whether it's Bob Dylan or Paul Simon or again, some of the big songwriters of the not just the lyrics of, Lieber and Stoller and some of the other, songwriters, and, whether Neil Diamond but some of the songs, I mean, you can't separate and say, well, these sounds or this chord progression didn't come from a Gentile music writer. So there's a lot of borrowing. There's a lot of stuff that's gone back and forth. But again, I think it's cool when we can use some of those psalms. I mean, I know some artists. We played the Todd Herzog Shalom Aleichem that he merged with Calling All Angels from Train. It's a great fusion. I mean, it's not, Train didn't write it as a Christian. It's not. I mean, they happen not to be Jewish, but the song Calling All Angels is not a religious song. It was not a song that he did that they did for a religious reason. But Todd Herzog heard it and thought it would be a good mashup for Shalom Aleichem, which I think is phenomenal. I think it's a phenomenal version. So there's a lot of borrowing. There's a lot of stuff that I think it's always great when we can do that and use those modes that we have for music. So we will be in session. We will be in person, and over the next month, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not traveling at all over the next month. But we will have a lot of stuff that we're busy with. But the next several Tuesdays, they don't overlap with the holidays. So the next Tuesday will be the day before Rosh Hashanah, but we'll be there, and then the following week, in the week between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So a lot of time, and again, I think we'll see some psalms. Hopefully, as you're worshiping and going through the songs and the prayers of Rosh Hashanah, you'll see some of the psalms will pop out at you. You'll say, I know that. That's from the Psalms, because the rabbis for our liturgy borrowed, that's what their basis was for. The liturgy was biblical text, and no biblical text fixed and kind of like made more sense to borrow from than the Psalms, because those are songs, those are prayers, that was what it was written for. So the fact that we reappropriate those Psalms for our prayers, for our tefillah, is not a coincidence. It was obviously, building on from those songs. If they originally sang in the temple, by the priests, they were going to be sung in the synagogue by us. So it makes a lot of sense that that's the predominant, not only place, right? Shema Ve'ahavta comes from Deuteronomy. There's, the Micha Mocha comes from Exodus. I mean, we know that there's other places, but for the most part, over and over again, we're borrowing lines from Psalms into our tefillah, and in some cases singing a whole psalm altogether, like Psalm 145, which is Ashrei. All right, everybody. Hope the year ends strong for everybody. We have, like I said, we'll be here one more time before, and maybe we'll see you tomorrow night at our Talmud study, and we will be we'll have our live service this Friday with Rick and Addie. So a lot of stuff coming up. And remember, tonight we also have a meeting of our Jewish Action Committee talking about stuff we're doing regarding October 7th. And we'll tell you more about it tonight. All right, take care, everybody.
Night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Rosemary. Welcome back.